So as usual, we don't have vast amount of time, so I'm going to pitch straight in. We're talking about the future. Why don't we just start off and say a little bit about what you're doing now, and in your current activities, where is the seed of the future? So what are you doing now that will become the future? Maureen, why don't you kick us off?
So my role at Facebook is I head up the grocery, luxury and fashion teams at Facebook. And we've been very much focused on the online to online solution. But what we've done a lot this year is to really focus on how the online can support the stores. So whether it's through new measurement solutions or driving visits to the store, it's working out how online can be a really good facilitator to support the store.
Well, we're doing something very, very similar. Of course, we're very active in terms of reinforcing the importance of the store estate, for the foreseeable future. But from an e-commerce perspective, if you work on the assumption that e-commerce will take a greater share of your business over time, and that's a reasonable assumption, and that as a direct result of that, your business might become less profitable if you're not very focused on the inherent profitability of e-commerce. We're working to move the site away from a pretty agnostic environment of you've got your choices, you do what you like, to one where we much more carefully curate what the customer sees and gets based on either their proximity to a store and our preference for a store visit, or if they're not near a store, what our preference would be in terms of the sort of services we'd like to sell into the consumer, so we can, sell services that are inherently more profitable.
But you say your preference. So,
yes.
I mean, that's refreshingly open. Everyone else is saying, oh, customer this, customer that. Whereas you're saying you want to
you can have
fit
both.
them around.
You can have both. I think you can have a situation where the array of services is still there. You won't refuse a customer free delivery if they want free delivery. But you can use techniques of persuasion and design on the site to upweight content that is desirable. And we know that works. We're doing it all the time. So you would upweight click and collect messaging in a store radius. You'd probably remove it entirely if you weren't near a store. And for us, the sweet spot probably is next day delivery, because next day delivery is volume. The customer gives you a contribution, typically. They return less, they get the goods faster, they contact you less. So we have a good sense of where the sweet spot lives. And that's good news for the consumer as well. It's faster, it's inexpensive, and everybody's happy. So I think we get beyond agnostic to curated in an effort to drive profitability on the site.
Lovely. I'm sure we'll come back to curated. I love that phrase. Now, Joris, you have created something that, when you first explained it to me, I'd never heard of, never thought of. It was just absolutely new. So it's been wonderful seeing how it's grown. Maybe just take a few moments to just tell people about Picnic, and then, is that the future?
I would hope so. So Picnic is an online grocery service, in a way similar to what you know in the UK as Ocado or Tesco's kind of services. But it is also very different. It is very different in the sense that it addresses the mass market, so the 80-90% of the population that can't afford to pay extra for services like Ocada's or Tesco's or any other kind of service. And it is based on a different kind of model, more on a milkman style delivery model, with small electrical vans that come once per day into your street and deliver you the groceries that you ordered the day before. But by using a completely different model with proprietary vehicles, all these kind of things, we're able to take the cost down dramatically and offer the consumer, all your groceries for the lowest price, free to your door, which makes it, this kind of convenience, also affordable for, let's say, the fireman, the policeman, the nurse, the teacher, all the people that today are not able to use these services. I guess I don't have to explain you that online grocery in the UK is very developed, but it's just 5 or 6, 7, whatever % of the total grocery market. So it's still very niche. It's not 70% or so. And we're trying to make it 70%. And that seems to work. So in Holland and in Germany now, where we operate, sort of more than 50% of the entire population that in cities that we operate in signs up. So that's a very different number, 50% versus 5%. So it's much, much more mass market, because indeed the families that, teachers, policemen, etc., have the same needs as more affluent families, if you want, here in London.
And just to be clear, where in the value chain do you play? Do you buy? Are you the transport mechanism? Do you have your own brands? I mean, I seem to remember you were partnering with, say, artisanal bakers or collecting things as well. I mean, how many places do you play compared to just delivering or just selling?
We're an end-to-end supermarket, so we do the same thing as Ocado would do. So we buy stuff. We're not doing, let's say, selling Waitrose stuff. So we have all the A brands. We have our own private label. We do work with local artisanal brands, anything you have. So it's a full supermarket.
And just the last thing before we move on to Google. It's city-based at the moment. Could this be a national service, a pan-European service,
Yes.
or is it city by city? What are the limitations on it just taking over?
But I don't think there are many limitations. We're just rolling it out city by city. We started 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, we opened the first city in Holland. And now we're in 60 cities. 3 years ago, we had 4 vehicles. Now we have 700. 3 years ago, we were like 30 people. Now 3,000. So it's expanding quite fast. And we're now into Germany, and it is probably not going to stop. There's no reason not to bring it any further. The interesting thing there's an interesting question here, is why is it that the entire tech community is always wanting to develop for the premium? So more on demand, faster. You almost can get your cappuccino from Starbucks in half an hour here if you pay a bit more. But very few innovations go for sort of mass market, where by far the largest audience obviously is. It's just an interesting phenomenon. I don't know why a service like Picnic doesn't exist anywhere.
I mean, I think there's a question. We're all constrained by where we started. Because if you start at the store estate, you start around it. But it's an interesting point. Now, if one company touches everybody in the world of digital, it must be Google. So no pressure. Alastair talking on behalf of all of Google. What are you working on at the moment in which you see the seeds of the future for retail?
Look, I think we're working on a lot of things. Certainly one of the core things we're doing is just helping businesses get in front of the right customers for them. So as you say, we touch all the world, but the real skill is actually getting in front of those right people, which are right for you as a business as well, whether you're looking at the high end, whether you're looking at the mass market as well. So that's one of the core things we're doing. The other things that we're doing is we're really trying to remove the friction from the web and from those experiences as well. And I think that's where a lot of businesses need a lot of help at the moment. So whether that's the work we're doing around progressive web apps, for example, so to try and increase the speed of mobile sites. We had a really nice case study we did with Debenhams recently, and they were able to increase the speed at which people actually went through, browsed, and got through to the checkout by 2.5 times, and it had a significant uplift on conversion rate. So we're really removing the friction. Also, Google Pay as well plays into that very nicely. And then lastly, and I think this for me is the most interesting part, is we're really trying to help businesses understand data and understand how that data and really smart analytics and computing power can really drive and turbo drive their organizations, whether that be in terms of what they're doing from a marketing perspective or actually across the whole of their organization. So for example, in the US, we're doing some work with Home Depot where we're sort of helping them understand how to better anticipate shelves being empty across the whole of their store network, and that's using pretty advanced machine learning and our APIs along those lines. So we're sort of trying to help people along the whole spectrum, especially when it comes to retail as well. And I think that for me is about the future as well. It's getting smarter about what we're doing, which is the most important thing.
Good. Now, maybe I'm just getting old, or maybe it's the time of day, but we talk a lot about the same things, as if we're somehow just on this route to optimizing customer centricity, mobile, data, AI. It's the same old, same old. So, and we just get better at it. Everyone gets better. The world carries on. is there something that you think is going to change the way your business is structured and it affects your daily job? What is actually, rather than just doing a bit more mobile, a bit more customer centricity, a bit more data, is there anything that you think is going to change the way that you operate either your own business or within your business that is going to be the first, every 5 years something big changes? What's actually going to change your worlds? Maureen. Is that unfair? Shall I pick on someone else
No,
and give you an extra
you
second?
can pick on me, that's fine. It was actually really interesting, the presentation before that talked a lot about friction. That really resonates with us. That's actually something we really try and talk to our retailers about, is figuring out where those points of friction are and how we can solve for them. So about 18 months ago, we worked in partnership with one of the leading grocers, and one of their challenges are, I think going back to your point, Alastair, around there's some empty shelves or there's some stock that's not available. What they asked us to solve for was being able to use our platforms to be able to say, right, these are the 4 or 5 things that we want to promote, but knowing that that product is definitely in store at that point in time, so that they can make sure the customer service is absolutely spot on, and they're not wasting their money promoting a product that's actually never going to be in store. So we found a solution, and we worked really closely with our really strong engineering team in London to create an inventory feed that's live, so that when you do go and promote that product, whether it be lamb or prosecco, and you've got that fantastic offer, it's in store and it's and you can go and buy it. So the customer service piece is impeccable. And I think what we're trying to work with retailers and all our partners on is catching up with those consumer expectations. I think a colleague recently told me a story where if you were going to order a taxi a few years ago, you would just typically order it the night before, and that was the expectation. You would order it 24 hours in advance. And now, talking to an Uber driver, if they're going to be 5 minutes, that's just not acceptable anymore. Like, people have gone from waiting 24 hours and that being totally fine to 5 minutes, and they're not prepared to wait 5 minutes. So sometimes it's less about the technology. It's just if one retailer or one client smashes that friction apart in one core area, it just, everyone's expectations suddenly goes to that point. And you have to catch up. So yes, we talk about AI, we talk about VR, we talk about AR, all of those amazing things. And right now, they're not great. They can be 10 times better. But if you're not doing some of that AR, VR stuff now, when it's chunky and clunky, by the time someone cracks it, and a retailer will crack it, and then that will become the norm, you need to be in that place, testing and learning, adapting, so that it isn't this brand new thing you've got to catch up on. You need to test and learn.
Okay, test and learn. Now, Sean, when you were on the cover of a magazine, we did a good interview with you where you were talking lots about test and learn, and the thing I remember was saying sweat all the little bits.
Yes.
As you sweat enough little bits, it turns into a big bit.
It doesn't tell well, does it?
Exactly, no, but so if you now look, that was about a year or so ago, what has changed in your world rather than just more sweating of little bits?
Our world is still very incremental. That's the reality of the world we inhabit. It is incremental. There are very few big bangs, except maybe in the area of payment, which might still be an area where the needle can move in a way that's more pronounced than other bits of the operation. But you've got to see where you are through the lens of where you are. And the biggest challenges businesses like ours face is, the legacy of store estate. Do you want to rationalize that store estate? Challenges around taxation and business rates and all of those things. So I think the single biggest thing that will redefine the future of our business is defining what exactly a store is and what those economics need to be, where they should be on the basis of 360 look at market penetration across all channels, as opposed to remit-driven penetration, and to take a view of the business that effectively dispenses with that accounting legacy and looks at the world we actually inhabit, which is the sort of multi-channel cross-commerce kind of world. And we're still stuck in the four-wall accountancy model, which is if it goes in a physical till, we understand it. If it doesn't, we don't. So we've just got to get past that. And people like Google and Facebook are helping businesses like ours get past that point where we start to understand footfall and how footfall can be enhanced through their platforms. And just what the function of that store estate is when you get there.
I should point out, for fairness, there are other global digital companies available as well as those on our lovely panel today. Joris, you are outlining the growth, from the startup in 3 years now to your business. What's changed most? Where have you had to change between this idea and where you're going next year?
I guess what has changed most is our. I think we could never envision what this could be. I think the whole thing about innovation is that one of you was talking about like incremental type innovation, and that's I guess what happens most. But the most interesting part, of course, is when you do something really new. But in order to do something really new, you need to be daring because you don't know the outcome. You have no clue. You're not doing something, well, I think this is going to work, so let me try it. You're going to, well, this must be insane. So, for example, in our business, when we came up with this idea, where we said, instead of coming 15 times per day to a street, which is the common kind of delivery slot type model, let's do one. Somebody told me and says, you must be out of your mind. You're going to compete with large incumbents, and they have fantastic trusted brands and stuff and so on, and they have a quote-unquote service level of 100 options for them to come to you. And you are going to offer 3. What do you think? Seriously. Don't even start. Your service level 3 versus service level 100. And I'm very happy we did try, but the interesting lesson around it is that the framing in which you look at things or you frame them is almost critically important. And you need to be daring enough to say, well, maybe it is very crazy, but let me try it in a small fashion. And I think many times we don't. And we don't make, and still in our business, people also come to me and say, well, let's do this. And I think, well, you must be, I don't get it. But the I don't get it type ideas is where in that area, you're going to find some of the most dramatic changes. So that's what we're trying to foster.
So I love that. And everyone loves, wild tests, especially if they work.
That's the point.
Where do you bury the bodies? Where do you bury the bodies for the tests that don't work? How organizationally do you cope with wacky ideas that just are wacky ideas?
Yeah, so because in the last piece of the sentence is actually the devil. You like them if they work, but you should actually like the ones that don't work. And that's easy to say and hard to do. But obviously there are ways to do it because you can limit the risks in many ways. So we started trying them in small neighborhoods. So what is the risk? Very limited. Or, how many things are there really in the business that you cannot reverse? You do something and you can, most of the things you do, you can reverse. Like selling the business, you cannot reverse. And there's a few things that are hard to reverse, but most elements you can reverse. I think it's a general human kind of inconvenience with insecurity, with living in the space of I don't know what's going to happen. And I think, in order to foster a culture of innovation, we need to find ways that we can live with that insecurity. And I think that's the biggest kind of challenge.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sometimes not knowing is the hardest thing to live with.
Yeah.
An easy certainty is often better. So Alastair, I don't want you to have to talk about all of Google's strategy. That's not fair. I'm really interested in your engagement with UK retailers.
Yeah.
You've been releasing more and more services. You're working closely with them. In what way has your role changed over the time you've been in it? What's the real change in, how Google interacts with the retail and brand sector?
Well, I think the way that the role has changed is it's just become more and more embedded across the whole of the organization. I think, when we first went out, we had a very interesting and compelling proposition for businesses, which worked very simply. And you could do the maths, and suddenly it was like, wow, okay, I get why Google, and I get why we're going to do it. Now, as technology becomes more and more complicated, it's increasingly important for us, with the businesses we work directly with, to go in there, to really understand their objectives, understand what they're trying to achieve, and then thinking about, right, now how do we work out how we can get Google working best as possible for your business and what you're trying to achieve, and whether we do that directly with the businesses or with a significant partner network. That's the way that we're doing it, and I would say that that's what's changed. Is it's not just about the Google search anymore, it's about how do we help solve genuine business problems and have real commercial impact across a whole organization.
And I would echo that as well. We had over 200 different product updates on our platform last year, and there's just no way retailers can keep up with that, and we don't expect them to keep up with that. So our jobs are very much to filter all of that noise out, and as Alastair said, just to figure out what are the 2 or 3 big business challenges you want us to work with you on and partner with you on and test and learn and adapt from, and give us those challenges, those meaty challenges, and then we'll figure it out together. But no, our roles are very much to filter out the noise and figure out what's most important to you.
You could, sorry, Alastair.
No, I was just going to go back almost to the question you were asking before there about incremental change and how we've been talking about mobile, we talk about artificial intelligence. I really think that the biggest transformational thing I see within organizations, time and time again, is the leadership. And that's what makes that step change between just, we're doing the same thing to actually we're going to go on a journey, we're going to make these difficult calls, we're going to make big bets, and we're going to try and drive this business forward. And as soon as the top level in an organization is engaged around these channels, then you start to do really exciting things.
Good. So, in our latest top 500, we found that every single company that was ranked has improved in every single dimension. But the best companies are more betterer than everyone else. So there's an accelerating growth of excellence and performance. And we're seeing performance in every dimension. And today we've had people talking about mobile with ShopDirect 85% mobile. So let's tick that off. Everyone's mentioned AI. It's now, I think, a requirement. You will say AI at least once every 10 minutes. We've got IBM and their version of blockchain into the supermarkets for supply chain. We have the customer, incremental improvement, leadership. But look, we're at the end of a conference, okay? People are going to go and get drunk. If they had to write one thing on their hand, so tomorrow morning, as they awake in the gutters of Islington, they're saying, I don't know what happened yesterday, but on my hand, I've written one thing. Can't be just so one thing for next year that if you had time in the lift with either your CEO, your favorite retail CEO, your investor, they said, look, everything's happening at pace. Everything is all over the place. But if you're going to spend half an hour on the train reading an article, what are you going to say to them? What is 2019, the one word out of everything in the gutter tomorrow morning? Not that you'd ever be there, Maureen, but kick us off.
For us, I just wouldn't underestimate the power of our messaging apps. So with Messenger and WhatsApp, we have about 10 billion messages that go through the platform each day. And some retailers are doing some excellent customer service in this area. So some of the grocers are using it from a customer service angle so that you can see, is this product in store? Someone like Lego are doing it where if you're stuck for a gift, especially at this time of year for Christmas, you can put in the gender of the child, what their age group are, what their likes and dislikes. So it just helps you on that journey. It's all automated, but it feels really personal because you're putting in what do you need, and it solves a problem for you. And all the travel agencies are using it as well. It's just, I would definitely use as a way to speak directly to your customers in a personal way. That's definitely something I wouldn't underestimate.
Great. That was the most on-message closing point I've ever heard. So are we writing WhatsApp or messaging customers?
In the UK, oddly, it's in most countries, it's either or. But in the UK, it's 50-50.
Fine. Let's just take a quick poll. Who wants to write messaging on their hand? No pressure, Sean. Come on. They've got the Sharpies ready. What one word goes on the hand? One word or thing, but, my hand's not that big.
Well, they're in the gutter. They need a motivational statement. we're going through some really tough transition at the minute, but it is going to be okay because we have the wit to manage our industry in a way that allows it to have a future. So the one word is future.
Right, future. Who wants to wake up tomorrow with future on their hand? There's one guy who's written on both hands. Thank you very much.
You're clearly the most erudite person in the room.
Yeah, well done. I thought you were going to say it'll be okay, and I think it probably would.
I nearly did.
Yeah. Joris, what are you going to write on your hand?
Well, I would hope that everyone could just execute or dare to execute their one big idea. Just whatever you do, wherever you're in, try to do something, the most daring idea you have, the biggest idea you have, and why not just do it?
Just do it. There's a phrase, it's got a ring about it. Do we have a vote for just do it?
Yeah.
Oh. Alastair, there's some left.
Yeah.
They have two hands. What would you suggest?
So I think mine is very close to Sean's actually, and it's around persevere. I think would be the key thing for me. It's just, it's difficult environment, and also technology is not easy, right? And it's evolving, and often businesses will go in, they'll try a different type of technology, and some will turn around and say that doesn't work for us. But I think the ones who are really successful are the ones who persevere with different types of technology as well and say, well, look, I really believe in this as a concept or as a thing. How do I make it work for us? And by doing that, that's how you start to sort of lead the pack versus just be part of the pack.
So we have persevere. Who wants to persevere? A couple of people. They're the ones with the Google Plus accounts, I can tell. So I think I'm misquoting Churchill, who said that leadership is the ability to go from failure to failure with no discernible loss of vigor. And so if I can thank our panel for having anything but a lack of vigor and bringing the conference to such a wonderful close. Thank you all so much for joining us. Let's show our appreciation of the panel.